All right. Well, we've got a lot of other things to talk about today. There's been some really interesting stuff. It's hard to keep up with everything right now. If you notice, there are just stories all over the place between the riots all over this country, the shootings that are occurring related to the riots. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of that stuff over the weekend. Guy was shot in Austin, Texas. But apparently, he was carrying an AK-47. We've seen some interviews of him. We've seen some photos of him. And I don't know if he shot first or if he approached his car in a threatening manner or exactly how it went down. But he wound up being shot by the driver of the car who had an AR-15 in the car, apparently. And that was in Austin, Texas. So these riots and what the media is uniformly referring to as peaceful protests are really anything but peaceful protests.
And how can you find in a car in Seattle down the street from where the protests are taking place a car filled with Molotov cocktails and guns?
Yeah. Well, you could go out there and watch these videos. You see them, they're firing things at the police. It looks like mortar fireworks that they're shooting at the police. We've just got all kinds of violence, and violence begets more violence. This is not going to lead to the place that at least they're paying lip service to where they want to go, which is decreasing violence. I mean, wasn't that the whole concept, is that there's police violence against members of a certain community? It somehow is more than what is visited on members of other communities. And, of course, the data doesn't really support that position. It doesn't support that position. The data doesn't support it. A lot of people feel strongly that way, though, and they're willing to go out and then be violent to other people. And we've seen the violence increasing, and it's really very sad when you think about it. And we're going to get to a story shortly that really is very, very sad in this exact vein. But I wanted to start out with the story about, and this is just one of many. I mean, we shared some with you last week about a guy named, I believe it was Henry Washington, who shot a couple of police officers in, I think it was Seattle, somewhere up in the Pacific Northwest. And this communist revolution seems to be festering in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm sure there's a reason for that. A lot of the people that live up there and their culture is pro-communist. It's very strongly leftist-oriented. And obviously communists are violent. They advocate for the violent overthrow of the existing system. That's what they advocate for. And that's exactly what they're trying to do up there. And we've seen it with the autonomous zone in Seattle. They've attempted to do that also in Portland. They've been attacking. I mean, the riots in Portland have been going on for almost 2 straight months. 2 straight months, every single night. They're setting fire to the federal courthouse or setting things on fire around the federal courthouse in Portland and so on and so forth. And now we have a story also out of Portland about an Antifa supporter who also happens to be a convicted pedophile. You got to love these people. Blake David Hampe, he's been arrested early Saturday morning this past weekend for stabbing a guy from Twitter who was down, I guess, walking around, checking things out, and maybe videoing some stuff. And the Twitter user goes by the name Black Rebel on Twitter. So he's an African-American guy, a black guy. And this, should I mention, this white pedophile Antifa supporter is following them around, is the story that's being told. He says, quote, "We were all out there, 4 friends, just trying to keep each other safe the best way possible. I figured I'd try to de-escalate and just have a conversation. I went over there and said, 'What's up, buddy?' And that guy went around and stabbed him in the kidney." I cut out some of the language because he had some pretty interesting language he used to describe the encounter. So I cut some of that out of the quote. But they were walking around live streaming on Periscope, noticed a guy following them, and then Black Rebel from Twitter decided to go over and say, "Hey, man, what's up?" And the guy stabs him, and the Black Rebel from Twitter said because of the length of the knife, it's apparently quite a long knife, he thinks the guy was trying to kill him. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.